means I have to be on time, but I'm actually 40 seconds late, so I will start. So welcome to Brooklands, and welcome to your Concorde experience. I'm going to begin by taking you back to the 1950s, when research was taking place in Europe into the feasibility of commercial supersonic flight. And that culminated in 1962 with the signing of a joint agreement, otherwise known as a Concorde, between the British government and the French government to co-develop and produce a supersonic airliner that could carry 100 passengers at twice the speed of sound. Development of Concorde then continued during the 60s, with the first aircraft taken to the skies in early 1969. So that was 57 years ago when Concorde first flew. Now, if you've been next door and had a look at the Vickers Vimy, that one is a flying replica, but the original of that aircraft, with the two gentlemen over there on the statue, Alcock and Brown, first flew across the Atlantic in 1919. So that was 107 years ago. And the thing that still impresses me is that there's less than 50 years design time between what is essentially a bag of string canvas and bits of wood and the world's fastest supersonic airliner. So the first flight in 1969 was followed by 7 years of intensive testing. In fact, Concorde is the most tested airliner in history, before she eventually went into commercial service in 1976. There were 20 Concordes built altogether, 4 prototypes and 16 production aircraft, and of those 16, 14 went into commercial service, with British Airways and Air France having 7 aircraft each. She's having a good day. Now, the British Aircraft Corporation, that was based here in Weybridge, was responsible for manufacturing the forward fuselage section from the front nose wheel to the front of the cockpit window, the rear fuselage from the trailing edge of the wing back to the tip of the tail that's above the bus here, and also the large tail fin. And those 3 parts made up 30% of Concorde's airframe, and they were manufactured here for all of the Concordes, irrespective of whether they were British or French. So we like to say Brooklands had a hand in being the first to arrive, the last to leave, and also flying the highest. I was hoping to say you're the best group I've had this year.
Yes!
Thank you, sir. Thank you, back. Thank you, sir. You're the best group I've had today. I'm here till Thursday. Or it's Thursday. Okay, you're lucky. Now, BAC also manufactured the wiring harness for Concorde, which, if you were to lay it out end to end, would actually stretch for 90 miles. And you'll see a snippet of it when we go on board the aircraft. So Concorde could fly at 1,350 miles an hour. That's twice the speed of sound, faster than a rifle bullet at 60,000 feet. To put that into context, if you wanted to fly from here to Edinburgh on Concorde at Mach 2, you could do that journey in around 15 minutes. Closer to home, if you could fly around the M25 at twice the speed of sound, and boy, we all wish we could do that. It would only take you 5 minutes to complete the loop, instead of the 5 hours it typically takes in the car. Now, flying supersonic required a large amount of fuel. In fact, 50% of Concorde's takeoff weight was actually fuel that she needed to take her across the Atlantic. And she would use half of that fuel just getting from takeoff to her cruising speed of Mach 2. Take the average size of a car's fuel tank to be around 50 litres. When flying at Mach 2, Concorde would consume that whole tank of fuel in just 7 seconds. Hypothetically, if you could taxi Concorde into a petrol station and fill her up with unleaded fuel, it would not only take you 2.5 days of constant pumping, and sadly I have measured it, it would also cost you about £140,000, which is about what I pay to fill my car up these days, or certainly feels like it. So turning to this particular aircraft, she is affectionately known as Delta Golf. She was the first British production aircraft to be built and the 3rd development aircraft in the fleet. She first flew in 1974 and was primarily used for type certification, pilot and crew training, and, and promotion of Concorde to other airlines around the world. She was retired in 1981 and put into long-term storage in Filton near Bristol, where she was used as spare parts for the rest of the BA fleet. Her most notable achievement, though, is that she was the first Concorde, in fact the first airliner ever, to carry 100 passengers at twice the speed of sound, thus honouring that agreement that was signed back in 1962. So whilst of the original 20 Concordes that were built, 18 still exist today in various locations around the world. I think historically this is probably one of the most significant ones. So let's go outside and have a look. Now the reason it's so high off the ground is all to do with the design of the wing. The delta wing on Concorde was designed to be super efficient at flying at twice the speed of sound, but it wasn't very efficient at much slower speeds, and the landing speed for Concorde was around 187 miles an hour. And at that speed the wing would not be able to maintain lift if it was flying horizontally. So when coming into land, the pilot would have to lift the nose, what we call rotate the nose, by 11 degrees, and that would give the wing enough lift to keep the aircraft in the sky at such a low speed. Now the designers realised that at that angle there was a danger the rear cowlings on the engine could actually hit the runway. So the designers did a couple of things. Firstly, they made the undercarriage legs very tall, and we'll come back to those in a minute. Secondly, they put an extra set of wheels at the back. So officially Concorde has 4 sets of undercarriage, and those wheels are specifically there to make sure the tail of the plane doesn't hit the ground if the pilot overcooks that 11-degree approach angle. Now if you talk to any Concorde pilot, he will tell you that never happened to him because obviously all of his landings were perfect. However, if you talk to the ground crew at the time, they will tell you that occasionally those tyres would skim the runway on landing, and obviously when they do, they have to check for any damage after the plane's landing. Now the undercarriage legs themselves have a unique feature that after takeoff, before the wheels fold up into the fuselage, the legs actually retract vertically about 20 inches. So the legs would extend and retract about 20 inches vertically, again to give that extra bit of height for the aircraft above the ground. It's not easy to see here, but the leg on your left is currently 10 inches longer than the leg on the right. That's because when we position the aircraft here, we position the aircraft to be level, but you'll notice the ground does actually slope slightly from the right to the left. Now, if you're coming into land at an angle of 11 degrees, the pilots can't actually see the runway because the nose is in the way. So down the other end, we have the iconic droop nose. When you're coming into land, the pilot would lower the nose by 12.5 degrees for no other reason but to allow the pilots to be able to see the runway when they're coming into land. Which is why Concorde always had that praying mantis sort of look about it as it was coming in on final approach. Any pilots here? I'm going to ask that. Any pilots? Anyone except you, sir. Want to give me a guess as to what this propeller is up here? Rat? Except you and you. Anyone else want to have a guess? No, you're right. It's called a rat. Ram air turbine. So like the steering in your car, which is typically power assisted, all of the flight surfaces on the trailing edge of the wing are power assisted using hydraulic pressure that's provided by the engines. In the very unlikely event we lose all 4 engines, the pilots would not be able to control the aircraft anymore because they wouldn't be able to move the flight surfaces. So in that situation, the flight engineer would lower this device. This one's called a HIRAT, a hydraulic ram air turbine. That propeller would spin up to about 5,000 RPM and provide enough hydraulic pressure to the flight surfaces to enable the pilots to regain flight control. Once you've regained flight control, you can then focus on restarting the engines. Otherwise known as a really bad day in the office if you're a pilot. Happy to say that never happened during Concorde service. We just have it here as an interesting part of the exhibit. Now, nearly every aircraft has one of these, either a HIRAT or an LRAT, an electrical ram air turbine, which is used purely as a backup system if you lose your primary engine power. So next time you go flying and you're walking down the jetway to your plane, if you see one of these dangling underneath your plane, turn around and get off. Because you should never see it, it should always be hidden. Now one of our tours, when they asked the question, what is it, had one young lady say, well, because Concorde flew over water, if it landed on water, that was the answer to getting back to the strip. What do you fly?
Nothing big.
Nothing big.
General aviation.
Doesn't matter. But so private planes, yes. Okay. Right. So we're going to go on board now. Pretty much everybody, please watch your heads as we go through the door at the top of the steps because the door's quite low.
It's like, see, they are trendy.
Hope you're enjoying this video. Quickly. Wow.
Okay, so the first thing I should point out is the door we've just come through is not the door you come through if you paid £5,000 for a supersonic ticket on Concorde. It's actually the door where most of the luggage was loaded onto the plane. So on Concorde, most of the luggage was kept at the back of the fuselage behind the bulkhead. Excuse me, I've just been losing my voice from the day. Unlike a conventional airliner where it's kept either underneath your feet or it's left in the terminal to catch up with you a day before you come back from your holiday. You can see behind you the skin of the aircraft is exposed, the green metal work here. Now the thickness of the metal at this point is about the same as this 2 feet point. So that's the only thing separating you from 60,000 feet and a very drafty 1,350 mile/an-hour wind that can stuck your hand out the window. Now, because of friction between the air and the skin of the aircraft, when Concorde was flying at Mach 2, she got very, very hot. And at this point, the skin of the aircraft would get up to about 91 degrees Celsius, hot enough that you could fry an egg on the outside of the plane. It wasn't the hottest spot. The hottest spot was right at the other end, on the tip of the nose, and there the temperature would get up to 127 degrees Celsius, so hotter than boiling water. Now, because of that temperature gradient in the fuselage, when Concorde was flying at Mach 2, she'd actually grow in length by up to 8 inches just through heat expansion. You can see this rear section we have laid out as an exhibition area. There would have been 60 seats in here as part of the commercial layout. On the left hand side here we have a chronological timeline talking about events that happened during the life of Concorde. On the right we have a timeline talking about events that happened during the life of this particular aircraft, Delta Golf. In about 4 minutes time we're going to have a video coming in talking about how Delta Golf got to the museum. I will announce that just before it's about to come on. In the meantime, please have a quick look around this area. I'm going to be at the front. If you have any questions, feel free to come up.
This is brilliant.
Did anyone actually fry an egg on it?
As soon as you know.
And why? Wow, is that Delta? No, it's AG. Those are the tickets, yeah?
All the way up.
Fine, yeah, cool.
It's upside down.
Any volunteers?
And it shouldn't have done. Positive to the whole way around. And no one could tell that they were upside down.
Wow.
It's just the best.
Yeah, we're realizing which crash because he's touching such a
Almost tells me.
yeah, that is iconic. Oh yeah, when you said wasn't it? No, that's what you said. You've only said the obvious, Alright, let me look at the back bit.
We went up to the Lake District.
So the video talking about how Delta Golf got to the museum is about to come on. It's the same on all of the terminals. So you can look at how
Go back to London then. Yeah, this one. Let's go further down.
The Brooklands Concorde was the first British production Concorde, the third built in the UK. Golf Bravo Bravo Delta Golf, or Delta Golf as she's affectionately known, opened the door for Concorde to enter passenger service. Like every other Concorde, over 30% of Delta Golf's airframe was built here at Brooklands before being shipped to Filton for final assembly. In the hands of test pilots Brian Trubshaw and Peter Baker, Delta Golf first took to the sky on February the 13th, 1974, the start of a test programme that would lead to Concorde's airworthiness certification. The first flight, which lasted 1 hour and 45 minutes, saw the aircraft fly from Filton to the Concorde test base at Fairford to join Concorde 002 and Concorde 01 in the British flight test programme. Delta Golf flew to many locations all over the globe, such as Singapore, Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates, during a flight test programme that lasted more than 7 years. She was the first Concorde to carry 100 passengers at twice the speed of sound. Delta Golf was used by British Airways crews for training in the summer of 1975. Over 50 training flights were conducted out of Fairford before passenger services commenced the following year. The aircraft's final flight came on Christmas Eve 1981, after which she was put into long-term storage at Filton. British Airways acquired ownership of Delta Golf in 1984 and in 2003 offered her to Brooklands Museum for restoration and display. Inside and out, the aircraft had been stripped of just about every conceivable part, but with BA's enormous Concorde spares holding, it was hoped that most parts could be found and eventually refitted. The aircraft was repositioned to allow it to be divided into 5 major sections, after smaller items such as the intakes and wingtips had been removed and transported to Brooklands. The Brooklands built forward and aft fuselage sections were the first major pieces to arrive at the museum in May 2004. A few weeks later, the 2 main wing sections were separated from the fuselage and transported the 125 miles to the museum. The final piece to be moved was the central fuselage section of Concorde, on which the restoration would be based. It was transported along the M4 and arrived safely at Brooklands after journeying down the leafy Surrey roads towards the museum. Hundreds of museum supporters, as well as His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent, were present to greet Concorde and see her being unloaded. Although it would be many months before structural rebuilding got underway, The volunteer team set to work restoring key parts of the aircraft, such as the droop nose and intakes, as well as beginning to remove 20 years of grime from the fuselage and wings ahead of repainting. The museum's contractors for the rebuilding started work in early 2005. The first task was to reposition the 5 main sections so that they could be reattached. When the aircraft was sectioned, new production joints were essentially formed. Aluminium channel sections were used to rejoin both the wings and fuselage. Alongside the structural work, the main volunteer effort got underway to repaint the aircraft. The surface was prepared before being painted with the trademark Concorde gloss white finish. After the forward fuselage had been rejoined, volunteers refitted Concorde's famous droop nose. With the structural rebuild nearly complete, Concorde was airbagged to full height to allow the landing gears to be fitted, the first time in nearly 20 years that the aircraft had rested on its own undercarriage. A volunteer team refitted the outer wingtips in late 2005, painstakingly installing over 600 bolts to hold them in place. With work underway to restore the interiors and cockpit, the volunteer effort in 2006 began with refitting the restored air intakes and rebuilding the engine bays. Special teams were formed to repaint and then fit the giant Brooklands-built tail fin, which was fitted in the summer of 2006, topping out the main rebuilding programme. Due largely to the efforts of an army of dedicated volunteers, sponsors and contributors to the museum's appeal fund, a Concorde with an uncertain future at the start of the millennium had been saved for future generations.
Would you like to come forward? I can see when the fuselage is going down the M4. Still here one day.
Well, that was the proposed livery, I guess.
The guy next to him spontaneously said, I bet you were in a Mark II Cortina.
Wow.
Just a brilliant response. Right, we're going into the front cabin now for the second part of our experience, where we have a sit-down video presentation. You can sit anywhere except the front two seats. Can I say that still photo is fine in the front cabin, but can you refrain from taking video, please, for copyright reasons? So if you'd like to follow me and sit down as soon as you can.
Oh,
More than normal flight.
Again, not ideal that they have, that everyone can see what we're doing.
And some flowers.
That's every day.